Oh, yeah? Where did you, Mike, yeah, this yeah. What's that? Maybe around the corner.
Pastor Steve Castle, we would like to ask you to give us the invocation, please.
And Pastor Steve Castle, I pastor in Lena and Pearl City. And I want to let you know how much of an honor it is to be able to pray over some of the most important people in what's going on in our region. And we, as non-Concordians, you need to know that this is a hub for all of Stevenson County. So even us little towns, we look up to you and for the things that you're doing. And so I'm praying into the fact that I really believe that what you guys are going to start here is going to have ripple effects as long as it's done in righteousness. So Father, right now we come together on purpose, with the purpose of understanding that there are people in government, there are people that are in our nation that you yourself have ordained to be there. And so Father, I also believe that because this is a land that is guided by the principles of righteousness and justice, that you have ordained that these folks be here tonight and to accomplish great works for your kingdom. Your word declares that when righteousness leads, is in our leadership, then the nation rejoices, the people rejoice. Father, we also know that your word declares that the people should be subject unto the higher powers because they are ministers of God for our benefit. And so, Father, I thank you that right now, as they take up the business of orchestrating and managing our town, that they do that from the precepts that they know that the rules, the laws, and the ordinances that they look into, they make, and that they enforce are for the benefit of your people and for the benefit of this town. And that they are here as a service to you first and to these people second, and that they can lean on and rely on the wisdom that you give them. Father, we thank you that they have allowed themselves to be humbled and to become servants of many for little or no gratitude. We love you and we thank you and we pray in the only name by which we can approach the heavenly gates, the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, being it is now 6 o'clock, we'll call to order this meeting of the City Council. And just for the record, Alderman Busker is not attending tonight and Alderman Ross is running a little late. So, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Clem.
Here.
McClanathan.
Here.
Ross is absent. Smith.
Here.
Busker is absent. Brashaw.
Here.
Keister.
Here.
And Chesney.
Here.
Thank you. Alderman Brashaw, could you please please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the order of business tonight is the approval of the agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Clem for the approval of the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Second is the approval of the revised minutes from the public hearing on July 17th, 2017. And there is a correction for the adjournment time to be 5:50 instead of 6:50. So is there a motion for the approval of these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have approval made by, a motion made by Alderman Keister, seconded by Alderman Chesney. All those, No, I guess we can do it. All those in favor of the approval of these minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. And then also we have the minutes from the regular meeting on August 7th, 2017. Is there such a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Alderman Chesney makes a motion for the approval, and Alderman Keister seconds. All those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Third is the public comments. Derek, is there anything on there?
I don't think there was a sheet out, to be honest. Oh, sorry.
It's just a non-agenda item, and so we'll have to wait until the end for this one. So thank you, Steve. And item number 4 is the consent agenda, and all the items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine unless someone would like to have something removed. Is there a member of the council that would like to have something removed for the sake of discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda is the approval of resolution 2017-37 for closure of streets for the Freeport Homecoming Parade on September 20th, 2017. The approval of resolution 2017-38, the temporary closure of streets for the Akron Homecoming Parade on September 24th, 2017. The offer sheet for Director of Finance, Randy Buckus, and the offer sheet for Director of Utility Operation, Tom Kopansky. Approval of to receive and place on file the City of Freeport's Police Department Activity Report for June 2017, the City Treasurer's Report, July 2017, and Building Permits, July 2017. Also, the approval of the water and sewer bills payable in the amount of $238,896.67. The approval of finance bills payable in the amount of $641,733.49. And the approval of the payroll for pay period ending August 5th, 2017 in the total of $458,103.29. Is there such a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alderperson Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Smith. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Brashaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McLanathan.
Aye.
Ross is absent. Smith.
Aye.
Busker is absent for a total of 6-0.
Okay, thank you. And item number 5 is the first reading of ordinance 2017-62. Madam Clerk, would you please read this for the record?
An ordinance amending Chapter 290 Compensation and Benefits, Section 290.02 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois. 2 drafts, option A and B of this ordinance, were reviewed at the August 7th Committee of the Whole. A motion to move forward option B for this ordinance was made by Alderperson McLanathan, seconded by Alderperson Clem, and it will be presented by Manager Crowe.
So Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the proposal to change for the ordinance for all of our non-bargaining officers and employees to tie increases into the city budget. And as the council approves that city budget, that will establish the level of which the increases will occur. This it was recommended by Roxanne and I both feel that this cleans up our ordinances and allows us to have a clear view and make sure that as we go forward into the budget process, that we don't have to go back and backdate the pay rate raises, but also allows the fire chief and police chief to better regulate their budget and mine and other employees within the city as we go forward. So,
Thank you. Any discussion?
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, is this ordinance time sensitive?
it is. We have some increases that are set up within the current budget that we've been holding until those this has been established. Plus, this will allow us to go forward and begin to work on next year's budget.
Motion approved, Mayor.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve ordinance 2017-62 made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Keister.
Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Chesney to suspend the rules, seconded by Alderman Clem. Suspension of the rules is non-debatable and needs to pass by a 2/3 majority. I don't know, can we do that?
We have
No?
6.
Is that number? Okay, so, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the suspension of the rules only?
Brashaw. Aye. Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross is absent. Smith.
Aye.
Busker is absent. That passes 6-0.
So now before you for the final passage is ordinance 2017-62. Any further discussion?
Mayor?
Alderman Keister.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that this is an issue that I've been trying to work on since I came onto council 6 years ago, because there has been a lot of disparity that keeps building, and I'm hoping that this ordinance will correct a lot of that and get things back to where they need to be. And
Title 2 Business Regulations, Chapter 873 Food Truck Vendor Licensing and Regulation of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Freeport, Illinois. A draft of this ordinance was reviewed at the August 7th Committee of the Whole and moved forward upon a motion made by Alderperson McClanathan, seconded by Alderperson Keister.
Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this ordinance reflects, as we went through the licensing for food trucks within the city, Attorney Cox and I found that there were some loopholes within the ordinance itself that needed to be addressed. So we went out. We felt that this did not reflect what the desires of the council was. So we went out to the cities of Moline, Carbondale, and Champaign, and reviewed their mobile truck ordinances, mobile trailer ordinances, and we then sat down, and Steve and Attorney Cox, I, and Aaron sat down and drafted this modification we feel reflects the mobile truck ordinance requirements, that the vehicles actually be licensed, and they're also required to move. And I did make the change in this ordinance that they only have to be away for 12 hours and they can come back into the site. So basically, if they move basically at the end of the evening, they can move and then come back to that same site versus the 48 that was originally reflected. So that, I know that was the desires of the council. We believe that this will put us in line with other communities of similar size with the food truck ordinances, and it will not go into effect until our next set of licensing, which will be the first, correct me if I'm wrong, and correct, the 1st of March of next year.
Madam Mayor,
Alderperson Brashaw.
thank you. We had discussed this ordinance in great length at our last Committee of the Whole meeting for those of you who are watching in the listening audience. And I'm really glad that they made these changes and the amendments that were talked about and discussed with the council. And I would like to make a motion to move it forward
Second.
to second reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to move forward ordinance 2017-64 made by Alderperson Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Keister. Is there any further discussion on this?
Mayor,
Yes. Alderperson Brashaw.
I should say with the amendments. I'm sorry, I did not say that.
The amendments are in there.
Oh, the amendments are in there now? Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you, Manager Crowe. We reached out to any parties that perhaps could be affected by this. Will we?
We've discussed that there was one particular truck that will be particularly affected by that, and Attorney Cox actually added a paragraph to their licensing. And when I talked to both the parties when we signed their license, we indicated that they would have until 1 March to comply with that, and that was the licensing requirements. Their trailer is currently not a licensed trailer. And we specified that they would need to do this, and we gave them a heads up. Since that point, I have talked to the third owner, and he is aware of this, but he has some concerns about their ability to meet it. The managing partners both indicated that they could meet it.
Perfect, thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment that I appreciate the work that was done on this ordinance. I mean, his food vendor trucks is kind of a fairly new avenue for us, and I think this should very well take care of the concerns and stuff that go along with it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will move this on to the next regularly scheduled meeting. On to item number 7, which is the repair and stabilization of the exterior wall at 21 West Stevenson Street in Freeport, Illinois, with the bid number of CD 00517. Community developer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to give you a little background, in January of 2017, the city demolished the structure at 17 West Stevenson Street. It was an emergency demolition as the building was determined to be unsafe. After this building was demolished, a common wall remained with 21 West Stevenson Street, also known as Joe's Pizza. Temporary measures were taken to stabilize the wall immediately after demolition. However, because of the nature of the temporary repair and the recent rain, it was determined that the common wall needed to be repaired using more permanent measures. The city drafted and released a bid packet, CD-5-17, in response to the issues with the common wall. Timeline included notification in the paper on the 8th, with bid packets available that same day. A mandatory pre-bid meeting was held on August 15th at the repair site. 2 contractors attended, and an addendum was published that same day. The deadline for the bids was August 18th, and we received 2 bids, one from Faulkner Construction and one from NICAM. Faulkner Construction had the lowest bid at $106,245. NICAM's bid was $162,780. It's our position that we recommend that Faulkner Construction be awarded this project.
Mayor,
Alderman Smith.
move to award the bid to Faulkner Construction.
Second.
There is one thing everybody should be aware of as we go forward with this. Faulkner made an addition error. There's a phase 2 is that they have to go into foul weather for 10 days of foul weather over 50 degrees. Faulkner recognized their error. They came back to us after the package. They were still low bid on the regular, but they had made a decimal place error on this. We, at that point, contacted our attorneys. Our attorney said if we could amend, because that all it is a decimal, it's called a Scrivener error. Yeah, what's that? Yeah, the Scrivener error, but they could amend their bid simply by moving the decimal so be aware of that. Additionally, I was contacted by Joe's today, and their insurance has gone up $15,000 because the wall is falling apart.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
probably for the viewing audience, Manager Crowe, could you talk about what remedies or what action the city has taken or plans to take on the current owner of the property, what was the building, which is now the lot? I mean, there's clearly some litigation that we can't speak to, but can you reassure the public that $250,000 of taxpayer money just didn't go out the door without us giving a good old college try to recoup the cost?
I'm going to turn this over to the Community Development Director because she appeared in court today with the attorney.
Exactly. We actually did file some liens, and at some point we may foreclose on those liens. Today's court hearing was to discuss the repair of the wall and access to do the repair work on the property owners of 17 West Stevenson Street. So we have to have access to that property to be able to make the repairs, and she agreed to do so.
And to speak to the other one, Attorney Cox, we actually have on executive session for him to come in and talk to the council on where we're at on the legal process with her.
Understood, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderperson Bradshaw.
thank you. Also with that access, Mayor Crowe, or Manager Crowe, I did that. Please forgive me.
I don't want the mayor's job.
No, Manager Crowe, please forgive me. I had a public complaint about that empty lot with a vehicle parked in it, and I was just hoping that someone could address that if it hasn't been moved yet.
That was one of the requirements that came out of the court hearing today, was she has to move the vehicle out of that area, and she has to give us access to that. We did agree to put
Some barriers out.
some barriers and construction out of there. But that she was coming out of the court case today, she was required to move that vehicle.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Alderman Smith.
Lowell, do we know, now that the building has been erased, do we know who actually owns this wall we're stabilizing?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So Attorney Cox, Steve, went back through law and dealing with common walls, and he had to go clear back to the courts in England, because there has been this court case may set a precedent, at least within the state of Illinois, because the common wall this is the first time that one owner who's had the building torn down objects to the common wall being repaired that the other owner has. And so there is no trial law in dealing with the common wall. Common wall, they're supposed to have easements, according to Attorney Cox, on both sides to maintain the wall, but because there's an objection, he went clear back into Old English law, and that's the only thing he could find where there was a precedent set on this particular common wall.
Well, I'm just glad that's on somebody's radar.
Yeah.
Mayor.
Alderman Keister.
Yes, Manager Crowe, one other question that goes along with it, as I understood it when we did this, since we did tear the building down under emergency conditions, we are under some obligation to also shore that wall up. Is that not correct?
That's why we wanted to go forward with this. That's correct. And that's actually dealing with the court order, as this is a continuation of that demolition and repair. So,
Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman McClanahan.
thank you. Previously, we had talked about having a prolonged period of time in regards to paying this. Is that still an option?
this will be set up payment over 3 years, and that's what's budgeted in.
Follow up, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. And while we're taking care of this wall, because it's the common wall, and there's another non-common wall just on the other side of this property, and while obviously maybe the legal obligations are different, have we had some discussions in regards to, at least with the aesthetics, as to what's going on that one?
We were contacted the first time by the owner, Thursday, about that wall.
Okay.
So we're having discussions with them. So if everybody was not aware, there was actually an 8-inch or a 12-inch gap between the two walls, but on the other side of the building. So from a legal standpoint, we don't have the same responsibility we do with the other common wall. He has stated that there was damage done to that wall when they tore it down. However, that's part of the investigation as we're going forward.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Nancy, could you just speak to the process of how we acquired the bid? You know, we put this out, my understanding is, to any contractor that wanted to bid based off of spec. So this was a fully open bid available to the public, and could you just quickly talk over how we arrived at these two contractors and how we're going to make the decision tonight?
Sure.
There's a little confusion on that, so it might be helpful for the viewing public, for those that watch the minutes and watch agendas.
Right, we put together the bid packet, and we of course published it in the paper. We also emailed there were 3 contractors who had given us proposals early on, so they received a copy of the bid packet. And then we also sent it out to our list of licensed contractors to bid on the package.
So anybody who's licensed in the city of Freeport would have received an email from your department?
They should have, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Alderman Clem.
if I could, just a little bit of history here, because I know everybody sits back and says, like Alderman Chesney said, here's a whole bunch of money, just appears to be going no place. One of the things that we run into as a city, we ran into it, if you'll remember, at the Knights of Columbus and a couple buildings down there that we ended up tearing down. and making everything safe. That's somewhat of the position we're in here. And basically, I look at it, I'm not saying it's our responsibility to do it, but if we don't do it, who is going to do it? And we're coming up on winter where we're going to have some real serious issues. So I'm glad the question's been asked, and I'm sure we'll end up being back in court trying to finish the job up, but I think right now we're taking the proper channels to do what can be done for the situation.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
And on that point, Alderman Glenn, I think it's also important that we've attempted to recoup the damages which were not granted. However, on top of foreclosing on the property and taking ownership and doing liens, if there's any personal liability that we can go after, I would suspect we certainly will. So.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion made by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Keister, to accept the bid made by Faulkner Construction for the repair and stabilization of the exterior wall at 21 West Stevenson. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Bradshaw.
Aye.
Keister.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Clem.
Aye.
McClanathan.
Aye.
Ross is absent. Smith.
Yes.
Busker is absent. Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item number 8 is the memorandum of understanding for the approval of and the authorization to enter into with the United Presbyterian Church regarding shared handicap ramp. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually going to, Sean, city engineer, negotiated this agreement as the ADA compliancy officer for the city. So I'm going to turn it over to him to go ahead and brief it.
Thank you, Manager Crowe. As we discussed at the Committee of the Whole, we brought forth a proposal, a memorandum of understanding with the United Presbyterian Church next door at 302 West Stevenson Street. The purpose of this proposal was to integrate some of our sidewalks as well as an ADA compliant curb ramp and parking lot with the church. Our boundaries are pretty much overlapping. It would be an issue in the future, and ultimately when we moved to this facility, we were looking at an ADA compliant route through the property from Stevenson Street. So working with the church, who had a non-compliant ramp that they were looking and interested in replacing, and our need for one as well, we elected to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. So what this proposal outlines actual costs from this year's street program, as well as ones that we've had historically to gauge what a total estimated cost would be for this project, and then broke that out by line items for earth excavation, 12-inch aggregate base, 4-inch hot mix asphalt, concrete sidewalks and ramp, pipe handrail, and security light. So those are broken out to a total cost of $13,649. And because this is mutually beneficial to both parties, we looked at a 50-50 split with the church to be paid back from the church in the amount of $6,824.50 within 1 year. So they are in agreement with those terms. Their committee does meet next week if we were to approve this, so I'll have this for their signature as well. But ultimately, we just looked at the opportunity to merge the grounds here with both agencies in order to save money by both parties and get a little bit better product, I think, for our citizens.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Chesney, seconded by Alderman Clem for the approval of the memorandum of understanding. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Alderman Bradshaw.
thank you. Engineer Gallagher, when do you see this project being finished by?
I look at the next couple of weeks. We will finish the concrete work all the way around the building, and then we've pretty much pushed off any attempt to grow grass until IDOT. We typically use September 15th. So we'll begin here in September to replant everything that's back in, and you'll see the site lighting go up. So the next 45 days we should be complete.
Follow-up?
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. And those grounds, will they be all around the city hall as well? Are you going to do all the planting at one time?
Correct. We've just started doing a little bit of topsoil on the west portion of the building, but that will be continued through and either be mulched or potential planting either late fall or early spring of next year, followed with grass seed on anything that's not mulch.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll on the approval of the memorandum of understanding?
Brashna,
Aye.
Keister,
Aye.
Chesney,
Aye.
Clem,
Aye.
McLanathan,
Aye.
Ross is absent, Smith,
Aye.
Busker is absent, making that a 6-0 passage.
Okay, next is the report of department heads. Community developer, anything further you'd like to say?
Yes, Mayor, I just wanted to update everyone on our demolitions. It looks like with the properties that we have under bid, fast track, through our grant programs, those would be the blight reduction programs, rounds 1 and 2, and our abandoned properties programs. We'll probably be about 50 by October, and then there'll be more with the tax sale, so we're on our way. I do want to mention that the grant programs through IDA, which would be the BRP 1 and 2 and abandoned properties, those take a little bit longer because there's so much documentation that goes into not only just the demolition, that's the easy part, but collecting all the paperwork and proof of payment, since it's a reimbursement grant. It takes a little bit of time.
Thank you. Any
Thanks.
questions for community development?
Mayor,
Alderman McLanathan.
thank you. I know there have been some efforts in regards to kind of expanding and trying to interact with more quote-unquote problem properties, if you will. Could you talk to us a little bit about what your department's been doing and how what are the efforts to kind of increase engagement on problem properties and address those issues as they arise?
I think it's been great that we've had an extra person addressing neighborhood blight and nuisances in our community. You know, it's a lot of conversations and relationship buildings, whether it's the tenant or working with a property owner or landlord. But people call up or they'll email, or maybe we'll get direction from a council member, but we pretty much within 24 hours, we're out there on the site taking a look at it. For the most part, if there's an issue that isn't an emergency, we will give a warning, and then there's a period of time that property owner has to address that nuisance. And then after that, if it's not addressed, you know, we'll go back and check, but if it isn't addressed, then it'll go to a fine.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Director, walk me through the process if somebody was to put bulk waste on their front step or on the curb. Clearly, I wouldn't suspect until we've used other remedies that we would just pick up everybody's garbage. I mean, then everybody would do it. So do we knock on the door, immediately issue a fine? Is it a warning? Because, you know, very quickly you can drive around certain areas of Freeport and see old TVs, mattresses, couches, etc., and it's awful. So what's the process?
It isn't uncommon for us to call a property owner, especially if that property owner's known, but we of course need to have some sort of paper trail. If it's a small item, not a lot of things, and it doesn't pose like a rodent hazard or some other hazard, we might give them some time to clean it up. If it's an emergency, yeah, we'll clean it up, but we're also going to file a lien
On the property?
on the property for the expense of having to do that, to address that nuisance.
Manager Crowe, are we doing that?
We have, in the last 10 weeks, we've gotten very aggressive with our liens. We're also working on water liens, and what liens will allow us to do is over a period of actually 18 months to 2 years, build up enough to where we can actually foreclose on the property. And it's a long process. We have to go back front, do a couple administrative hearings, and then go actually to the circuit court judge following those liens, and then Attorney Cox then has to go back after we have enough money versus what the property is worth, and then foreclose on that property. And then we can go in and demo that property.
Good work, thank you.
Okay, Director Dole, did you have anything you wanted to add besides your report?
I do not, unless there's questions.
Any questions for Director Dole? Seeing none, Chief Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One information item this evening. The fire department is pleased to announce that we are offering our Citizen Fire Academy once again, so we'd like to extend an invitation to the viewing public and also to the elected officials and Manager Crow. The specifics for our Citizen Fire Academy begins September 12th, runs 7 weeks, and finishes up October 24th. The time of the class for the instruction is from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Applications are available at the Central Fire Station, and also they're available on the city's website. Once picking up or filling out an application, they should be returned to the Central Fire Station no later than September 15th. Typically, we start a little bit later in the season. It's more of a fall class. We're trying to conclude this prior to Halloween. So we're starting a little bit earlier this year. That concludes my report.
Any questions for the fire department? Seeing none, Chief Barkalow.
Thank you, Mayor. Just got a few things to report. Sunday, we had a very busy day. It started out at 5:30 in the morning. We responded to a robbery at Fast Fuel. If anybody remembers or not, that used to be the old Road Ranger. Just kind of give you an idea on West Galena. We're working with the surveillance. We're working with many other investigative tips and procedures to try to get a case on that particular one. Later on that day, we responded to Oak Street for a shot being fired. It ended up being a domestic situation. Nobody was injured. It's unclear exactly what, other than the domestic situation between a guy and a gal. We recovered the weapon, or the weapon was recovered in Rockford, and there'll be some charges pending in that. And then Sunday late, we had the Peace Candlelight Vigil that myself and Manager Crow attended. I thought it was very well attended, and no other problems other than 250 people in Debate Square. So that's my report.
Any questions for the police? Seeing none, water and sewer.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of updates. We did have 2 main breaks yesterday that we did repair. A little bit of tweaking with the high pressure zone. We've isolated what may have been the cause there. It's just more slowly honing in on some of those controls and making sure that those can't get out of line during the week or during shift changes and things like that. So nothing to be alarmed about, but based on their locations, I knew right away it had to be something system related, and we believe it was. On the sewer side, you may have seen us working on US 20 by the box culvert between Greenfield and Mesa. We completed 460 foot of new force main that's installed. That's basically a 200-year product that we put in the ground. It's kind of like burying a tractor tire and expecting it to degrade in the next 200 years. So it's going to be there for a while. Worked out very well. We're out of the right of way, or way off the roadway, well underground, and that's where that will sit from now until the end of time, perhaps. So that project, $35,968 for that section, and that is the first capital improvement project that we've done with the new capital improvement funds. So we've had several spun cast main breaks on that over the last couple of years, actually one during the US 20 box culvert project. So it's good to get that one crossed up our list. We have 2 more miles of force main that we'd like to do sooner rather than later. The also completed this week, will be completed here tomorrow, is the Mesa Canyon Arapahoe Drive project. That total construction cost was $380,003.35, and you guys gave me the permission to go up to $398,000, so kept that about $18,000 under when we last discussed. We talked about the limits in that project. That specifically gets us halfway through the subdivision. So rather than what we had bid, which would have been 3 mobilizations through that subdivision over whatever many years we may come back, that knocks it down to 2 mobilizations, which is, I think, substantially better when you talk about cost and remobilizing contractors over many years. So we will now turn to getting topographic surveys done of many projects that I think are long overdue for next year, and then working in what council has allocated for the new funding, the additional funding this year in our budget that'll kick off spring projects as well as additional water and sewer CIP projects, which will kind of overlap. So this was a little bit of a slow year as far as overall projects, but next year this was kind of the planning year for what will be a strong construction presence next year. One more thing. Did want to mention, did I mention the window blinds already?
No.
Okay.
You don't need
So the window blinds were installed. You see them through in interior. They look pretty well. However, they're a 2-color window blind. The interior is actually facing to the exterior. The exterior is facing to the interior. So the contractor will have to replace these, but they will work in the meantime. So I noticed it as soon as I pulled up when the outside was white and it's supposed to be the cream color, and the cream color is supposed to be facing out. So, but they are up. That is what the final product will look like. However, that will have to be changed out.
Alderman Clanahan.
Thank you. You mentioned the force main being completed as the first project under the new capital improvement funds, and you also said about 2 miles of force main down the road, which is significantly more than even what you just put in there. What's the time frame that you're looking for those new force mains? Are they in conjunction with some of the other projects we're looking at in the near future regarding wells and things of that nature for the new funds?
They're definitely at the higher end of the priority list just because of what you're dealing with. You know, unlike water, which we can control and nobody minds that when it breaks in their yard. I mean, sure, it may be an issue, but it's not raw sewage. So we do have several sections down by the city yards that have been a chronic break point. Actually, Park Boulevard, which was the reason why I pulled the Park Boulevard water main, which was supposed to be the route of the original Phase B project, because I'd rather tackle all of those issues at once than to do one and tear up the roadway. So those will be on the forefront. This one was nice because are very beneficial to get out of the way, because obviously when we have a break there, it goes right into the creek, and then we're filing with the EPA that we contaminated the creek. So that's definitely one to get out of the way. But those will be at the higher end, along with some of our continuing, we're just going to go really with the hot spots where we had a lot of breaks on, whether it be water main or force main, and work our way through. But that first 2 miles is going to be pretty much the next 5 years for sure.
Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Sean, you've done a really nice job on City Hall, so again, thank you for that. A couple of observations. One is we had a leak in the basement. Some residents have expressed concern that there might be problems down there. Has that been remedied?
Yeah, we have an ongoing construction site around the exterior here, and everything is backfilled with chips for drain tile. Well, that works when you can cap everything off. However, our roof drains were not fully attached as we were doing construction. So although that trench is great for draining things out, when it's the only way in, we just filled up the trench with stormwater from our gutters that weren't fully connected. We've since all that work completed. Actually, during the rain events, I was down in the basement, I think the one Friday night at 10 o'clock, looking at the holes in the foundation. So although we waterproofed the exterior foundation, I mean, it can come up underneath in the floor, and that's where it was. But instead of injecting half the rough water into that trench, it's now being bypassed out to the street. So I believe those are all corrected. We may have some, just because there's not vegetation on the property, it may weep a little bit. But once we get grass established, and a lot of the slopes weren't shedding water away from, because of ongoing construction, we're shedding water away from the building. And us having 8.5-inch rains, much like anybody else's property, it can only take so much. But the construction activities aid that. So I think we're fine.
Follow up, Mayor?
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. And the water damage that occurred in the basement, was that properly remedied? Was there an inspection, a visual inspection by yourself? Was there any?
Yeah, we actually went and took a camera and looked up there's several surface pipes at the exterior, and looked up those, and nothing appeared to be clogged. I think it was more of when you come down the staircase, just inundated with water. and the fact that not all the roof drains were tied in. But we went through the entire building. There's a chance there, because there was some water by the door, that I'd like to address at the lower level because it faces the west. And maybe we'd look to, as well as the ramp, of putting some sort of canopy over top of that, so that way you don't come out and you're immediately inundated with water, freeze thaw, things like that on staircases. So that may be an opportunity to look at something in the future as we build a maintenance plan around this building. Thanks.
One thing I'll add to that, which we did have a bunch of our records that were damaged that were stored down in the room. We've since brought the state in. The clerk has contacted them. We've identified some that need to be gotten rid of, and then we're waiting for a resolution on the other ones as we went forward. That we did have some water leak into the carpet, but we immediately got our cleaning surface and clean out that carpet and dry it out.
But there's no concern about mold or
there is none.
contaminants
No,
whatsoever?
none whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
Sean, a while ago, we heard that the new tower was being built and it was going to be a gradual, slow process. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how that progress is going and whether or not, well, have we taken any measures, real measures on this added stresses to the old pipes and the old system?
Absolutely. So what you're experiencing now in the high pressure zone is what it will be. We brought it up to about 75% originally, and there's just, what we found out right away is there's not a whole lot of throttling up and down to it. You're trying to hit with a lot of force a target window without overfilling the tank or not even being able to fill it. So once we hit that target pressure, about 70–80% of what the tank capacity was, we pretty much left it at that. So residents probably, instead of seeing a 20 PSI increase, maybe saw a 17 PSI increase, but then a couple of weeks ago we were maybe at 15. So you might have saw an extra pound or two as we begin to calibrate the system, but no major changes. So the biggest thing that we're experiencing now is, when we have a water main break, we need to know how to shut things down. And so that's just going to take crew time and figuring out a few of those ins and outs. We did have the PRV stations that were designed properly. They're supposed to backfeed in order to maintain pressure in the low side to fill and feed those areas for fire prevention. Should the fire department need that, and that's not how they were originally set up. They were set up on a 1 pressure system versus we would have 2. So those are parts that are being swapped out. We have not got those yet, but that's an up and coming thing. So not necessarily an issue for the system on a whole, just something that we want that, we had hoped to have that designed into the overall features. So it's really just gonna come down to every shift operator, every construction crew, myself, and our new Tom that comes on board, understanding what valves you can turn, which valves you can't turn, and in order to diagnose problems while they're happening so you don't create additional problems. And that's somewhat what we saw when we had the 6 main breaks the one evening. Basically the system, when it pumped up and filled the tower, it shut down too quick. That triggered a water hammer back through the system, and then you saw various breaks throughout it. That may always, there's always that threat there as you have a system this complex, but that's part of what Tom Glendenning's been doing this last month of hammering in those controls, so that way it's, you can't just walk in there and say, hit this button and everything changes. It's gonna be pretty much locked in.
Mayor?
Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you. Alderman Smith took some of my questions, but I was also asking about the water pressure zones. And if I'm to understand this, you think they're about 75% up and running as far as the full pressure in all the neighborhoods that we have within our wards?
Everything you're experiencing now is the final product. We are at, when I say 75%, it's the tank capacity. So our tank elevation dictates the pressure within the system. So there was, I think, a theory at the beginning that you could get closer to maybe 90% tank capacity. It's just too tight of a tolerance. It's kind of a hair trigger, so to speak, on it. So we're not going to get that close just because it's theoretically maybe impossible to get everything tightened up to that window. However, where we're at is where we're going to be, which is around 80% tank capacity, which is going to give you that 15 to 17 pounds that we were looking for originally for fire protection and for use in the second story bathrooms.
Manager Crowe at one time told us we can have the constituents call in if they have problems. Is that still protocol as far as if they're having problems with either the water pressure or they suspect there might be water leaking out their yard? Would you prefer them to call the water yards, the water department, or Manager Crowe, the city hall? What is the protocol? Because a lot of people want to know that.
Absolutely. The numbers that we gave out on the original form, as well as the back of your bill, those are still the relevant ones to call. Find the same ones on our website. So call volume, I mean, now it actually has been more flood related. People who have had things break because of the flooding and have been looking for relief on that. But we have not seen a whole lot of phone calls other than just the Saturday. We knew we had a slow leak out by Emmanuel Lutheran, and then we got another call of a main break on Park Boulevard. So since then, it's been relatively quiet.
Mayor?
Alderman Smith.
Maybe not, I don't know, maybe you can't answer this, Sean, but how is the upgrade to our new water system likely to affect our future ISO rating? Maybe that's a question for the fire chief, I don't know.
Yeah, my understanding, and I'm sure we can chime in on that from the fire department's perspective, but I mean, definitely we had modeled, I think it was perhaps even with the old council 2 or 3 years ago, we had shown some of those studies, pressure studies over, by Park Boulevard and some of the high areas where elevation, you're only getting 25 and 35 PSI at its peak, and we simulated some of those fire flows. So this should be significantly better, given that. I mean, it wouldn't be any worse, I don't believe. However, the fire department and fire chief may have a little bit more insight, because this would be my first time going through this process.
Chief Miller, did you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you. We're presently working with Water and Sewer to obtain updated information on their data and the advantages, the enhancements of the water distribution system. And I'm pleased to announce that it looks like the hydraulic modeling that the city invested in last year or the prior year is going to be beneficial for the ISO review. In the past, my understanding is they'd have to come out here and actually flow several hydrants and do pitot gauge readings and testing. Whereas now, looking at ISO's paperwork that I've received so far, it looks like they'll honor that hydraulic modeling, which is a benefit that it's captured, quantitative data. It's also saving the wear and tear on the hydrants. We don't have to actually physically go out and open 50 plus hydrants, do testing, open them up, shut them down. We're always, even with the best of distribution system, you could have a rupture or a break just by utilizing those items for testing. So it looks like we're gonna have benefits from the enhancements with the water tower, the enhancements to the distribution system, and also hydraulic modeling.
Follow up to that. We also did install about 76 new hydrants, so obviously replacing existing infrastructure that may have failed, it would be a big one. And there was a lot of added spacing within that, so I believe they did get a hydrant map, which should show filling in a lot more areas, at least in the Phase B project. But I mean, obviously, I don't know how they prepared their report last time, so if there were things that were assumed that were incorrect, but from, obviously the biggest things that count is getting water to a fire. Those are all far better than what they were even 6 months ago.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Alderman Keister.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I think this improvement over there is way past due. I can speak from previous experience, actually running a pump at a fire scene in that area. We had a Pierce truck that we bought that was more powerful than what we normally bought, and we could not run it at capacity in that area because if we did, it would collapse the lines. I'm hoping that this will eliminate that problem and allow the flow. But there were times when we were over there that we had to go to different hydrants in different areas to supply enough water at the scene to be able to do the job that needed to be done.
Madam Clerk, could you please let the record show that Alderman Ross joined the meeting during the city engineer's report? Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the department head reports. Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple things that need to update on it. This morning we were notified by Illinois Government Financial Officers Association that with the passing of the new budget, the state has decided that they are going to reduce personal property replacement tax approximately 28%. What this is an impact to us of a reduction of $128,000. Our personal property replacement tax is used to fund both the library, some in the general fund, and fire and police pensions. So we will be looking at the budget as we go forward and know how to make recommendations on how we're going to replace that. So that's an impact. I've already been in communications with our new financial director, and Linda and I and he have been talking about this. Additionally, I wanted to let everybody know the final cost for garbage in the transfer station for the flooding was $44,000. So we will be making a recommendation as we go forward to everybody how to pay that. When I discussed it already with the president, the chairman of the financial committee, on gotten some recommendations as we go forward. Our new Tom Kapansky is actually, even though he's not going to be arriving until the 5th, is going with Sean and Tom Glendenning up to Tonka to begin to look at water treatment facilities with Tonka up in Minneapolis. I believe it's in Minneapolis, correct, Sean? So he will be here officially on board the 5th. He is going to make residence here in the city. At this point, he's not sure if he's going to rent or own right away. Our Randy Bacchus will be arriving. He may be here on the 5th, but he is closing on his house in Effingham that week, and then moving down here and closing on his house here that Friday. And believe he is living in over near Alderman Clenneth, and near he just drove right past the old fire chief's house and bought the house 2 doors down. So he should be on station going forward. He is already aggressively looking at our financials and watching what the state's doing. We're all looking at how we're going to be the effect of as we go forward on the TIF with the new changes coming forward too. So that's what's going on. We are making preparations. Good work by Director Doles, guys, to get the alleyway done for Tour de Freeport. And get that done. And if anybody hadn't been down there, there's a nice port down there as well. So, but that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes,
Question. Lowell, I didn't ask Sean while he was giving his presentation. What's our setup for our meeting next week with 1st and 6th wards, and a little bit about that, if you could?
Sure. We are going to meet, we're having a town hall for the 1st and 6th wards to talk about projects, the bridge, as well as the feed-off projects from those. It'll be in the same location as the 1st and 6th ward meetings. We are going to publish and make it's because publish it in the paper as well as on Facebook. Letter went out from the engineer on, was it today or Friday? Today, and then there'll be a follow-up letter from me later on this week, just to remind everybody about that. And anybody, we're going to be talking about whether to make it a footbridge, whether to make it a 2-lane bridge, and then what improvements we need to make in the areas around Demeter and with the roads as well as the pipes in that area. So, and Sean, would you like to add anything else on that?
I think you covered it.
And the Park District will be attending that as well because they have an interest in this. So,
thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, I am happy to report that the community developer and I had a chance to attend the Northern Illinois Mayors Association meeting to learn from our neighboring mayors and their challenges. And you will be happy to know that the challenges that we face they are not unique to Freeport, and that many of the surrounding communities have a focus on their public safety. So happy to say that we have our subcommittees for the Public Safety Task Force are scheduled to begin meeting even this week, and they will be focusing on the youth development, neighborhood improvements, workforce development, and the faith-based communities. So I would like to say thank you to Chief Barkalow and to your staff for continuing to make a difference, and ask that the public not only supports our officers, but remains observant and reporting any situation that would look out of place. And this is something that we have to do together as a community, and we have to fight for our neighborhoods because we have to be able to all do it together. So that concludes the mayor's report. And so on to the council announcements. Alderman Brashaw.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank Engineer Gallagher and Tom Dole's crews for taking care of a couple of situations, some of which happened with the flooding, the washout on Prairie Street. A lot of the east side of the road had washed out with some of the stormwater, and they were able to repair that. And also Greenfield Drive, or Greenfield had a few sinkholes and areas that I asked them to look at that were getting larger, and they came and serviced those quite readily as well. But I know the staff has been overwhelmed with the amount of street work they've had recently, and also with all the flooding. I just appreciate that. Thank you.
Alderman Keister.
Thank you, Mayor. Two very quick things. 7th Ward Neighborhood Watch meeting Wednesday night, 6:30, main fire station on Walnut and South Street. And last Saturday, I received something in the mail that kind of surprised me, and I want to publicly thank Representative Brian Stewart. We received a proclamation from the House of Representatives for Brian Stewart in recognition and condolences for my wife's passing. So I wanted to publicly thank him for that, and we will be sending him a card for that as well. That's all I have.
Alderman Chesney.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thanks.
Alderman Clem.
Yes, the only thing I wanted to announce was the meeting that Lowell mentioned, which is next Tuesday night at Schwartz Chapel at 6 o'clock. As mentioned, the city manager, Sean, and the Park District will be there to talk about some of the upcoming things and some of the needs for the areas around Demeter and in that location.
Thank you. Alderman McClanathan.
Nothing further, thank you.
Alderman Ross.
Nothing to know.
And Alderman Smith.
I have nothing to announce, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That leaves us with public comments and Steve Carroll.
Okay, I'm Steve Carroll, 8110 in Freeport. This is about FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. For the last 20 months, I've submitted many FOIAs to the Freeport Housing Authority. They have been very difficult and very obstructive to deal with. On June 13th, I submitted a FOIA, and I'm still waiting for the answer. All I've gotten from them is disingenuousness and obstruction. The state of Illinois requires governmental bodies to have FOIA officers. They have to be certified once a year by taking online FOIA courses, just to be certified. Brenda Westfall, she's the Housing Authority's FOIA officer. Her last online certification course was in 2015. Nothing since then. And Larry Williams, the executive director, has taken no online courses from the state of Illinois. Now, how do I know this? Well, gee, I FOIA'd the Public Access Counselor's Office, and I have that information. Now, the Housing Authority, they just aren't thumbing its nose at state and federal FOIA laws. They're giving it a big, fat middle finger. And Jody Miller, you are the presiding officer over the Housing Authority. I want you to look into this. Lift up that rock a little bit, and let's see what's underneath it. So, thanks.
Is there any other public comments? Seeing none, We will move on to item number 14, which is the executive session. Madam Clerk, could you please read this into the record?
Pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Also 5 ILCS 120/2C2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. There is a third. Thank you. 5 ILCS 120/2C11, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to leave the open session and enter into executive?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Clem, seconded by Alderman Keister. Madam Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Brashaw?
Aye.
Keister?
Aye.
Chesney? I'm sorry, he stepped out. Clem?
Aye.
McClanathan?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
And Busker is absent. That passes 6-0.
7. No, you're right. Retrain. Retrain.